Okay, so always that first little question in your head, is there one or two variables? I only see one variable, so I'm going to try to get it alone. So let's move some stuff. So algebra isolation. So I'm going to add the 1 away. I'm going to times by 3. I'm going to divide. And then to get b alone, I'm going to have to square root. And then when we write our answer, you're going to have to remember there's 2, right? Plus or minus 3. I could have squared 3. I could have squared negative 3. That's 2 options. Okay? If this number 9 is something different that doesn't square root, please leave it as a radical. So if this was a 10, this would be plus minus root 10, because I don't want to give a decimal answer. Okay, so that was an isolate. Number 2. Okay, I see 2 variables, y squareds and y's, different. First, check, does it equal 0? Good. Now I go into my styles. Is there a factoring style of recognition here? Simple trinomial, is that what you're thinking? Okay, so then your format should be 2 brackets with a YY. And then you're going to say, well, what multiplies to 12? Adds to negative 7. Okay, and then the solution is what makes it a 0. So positive 3 and positive 4. On your test, I think you're going to have lots of time on this test. You can always put a 4 through here to check. 4 squared, 16, minus 7 times 4, so minus 28, plus 12, yep, that's 0. Check. Okay, question 3, you actually could do this in 2 methods. So if I, in my instructions, say solve, you can pick anything. If I say you have to solve by factoring, that's different. So I could pick isolation on this because there is just 1 variable. Or there's a style of factoring, difference of squares. Okay? You pick. I'm going to let you do this one on your own. I'm going to write down both options because some of you might pick one way or some might pick the other. Okay, so here was my isolation. I moved the 100 square rooted. And then here's my difference of squares. Obviously, they both have the same answer, right? Okay, number 4. Okay, there's definitely more than 1 variable. M cubes, M squareds, and M. So it's more than 1 variable. Equals 0. Good. So now my next process is, do I recognize how to factor? Which of the 4 would it be? So your answer to that should be that it was a GCF. So when I look at the three terms, there's three terms, they do all have something in them that I could take out. So M out. M out. Okay, we have to keep going now. So once I do that, here's another recognize. So this little part, now I got a simple trinomial to go with that. So multiples of 14 that add up to 9. Okay, you cannot forget to bring the m down though, right? This would be a mistake. That's still a multiplier yet. So this one has 3 answers, by the way. M could be 0. Don't forget that 0 in the front there. Okay, number 5. First, I see 2 letters, 2 variables, c squareds and c's. 2 variables equals 0? No, it doesn't. So I have to deal with that first. Okay, you see in my process? 2 variables equals 0. Okay, so now I go into, do I recognize the factoring style of it? So I'm thinking simple. CC multiplies to 26, and it can get me to an 11. Did you pick 13 times 2? I need to be negative 11. Okay, signs are important. This negative 26 is telling me that there's a plus and a minus involved. Are we putting equals 0 at the end? Are you checking your work? Glance quickly. Did you always put equals 0 beside here? Because that's an equation. You can't forget that equals 0. I have to deduct points if you forget that. Okay, number 6. I'm going to tell you that I just don't like this one. There's something about it that's not fun. What's that thing that I don't like? I don't like having a negative boss. This is the boss. It's negative. So how could I adjust that? I could times everything by -1. But you have to do every single thing. So positive x squared, positive 8x, but now a -9. Okay, 0 still stays 0 though. Okay, now I'm dealing with a simple trinomial. So this is easier because it's xx multiplies to 9. So 9 times 1. Okay, number 7. 2 variables equals 0. Okay, that's that. So now recognizing a factor style. This one's a little bit tricky. I'm trying to trick you here. What's the factoring style? There's actually a GCF in there. Okay? GCF is always something you should just look for right away. It's the first glance. Do I have anything that I can pull out of all three terms? Yes. I can divide them all by 2. So if you can look for a GCF first, then you should go for that one. So x squared, 7x, and a 10. Okay, this becomes way easier now because it's simple. A simple trinomial. So now you're just trying to multiply to 10 and add to 7. Okay, there's only 2 solutions for this. I sometimes get the mistake of people trying to solve for something out here. There is no variable there. It's just a 2. So don't even look at that. It's a constant. It's not a solution that we're looking to make right there. Okay, so we're only looking at what x can be and x can be. There's only 2 that we're looking at. Okay, number 8. Two variables equals 0. So I'm going to go through my factoring. I can't GCF anything out because 17 is prime, so that's not going to work to get anything out of a 17, unless it is 17. So then are we going to have to do a complex? Probably. So I'm going to look for my flow number to start this out then. So 6 times 12 is positive 72. Can anybody think, instead of me listing it out, does anybody have multiples of 72 that could add to 17? Or do you want me to start listing them? You got something, Brendan? 8 times 9 is 72, and they would both have to be negative. To multiply positive, add negative 17. There's your combo. Okay, so I could get this f, 1x, 6x. Or I could do a 2x, 3x. Those are some options. Oh boy, we're going to have lots of options here. L, 112, 26, 34. Okay, so now it's your puzzle part. Can you figure out some kind of partnership that will make 8x and 9x? 8x and 9x. Did you pick the 2, 3x and the 3, 4? There's my 8 and my 9. Do you see my partners? Okay, so brackets 2x, 3x. So this is the FOIL part that I'm doing. This is first times first. What do I need? 6x squared. Okay, so now I'm going to go FOIL outside the FOIL inside. So now I can see what I need to make on the hook partnerships. So the 2x has to hook to the 4. So that outside is showing me negative 8x. And the 3x has to hook to a 3. FOIL it out. Okay? You should never make mistakes factoring because you can FOIL it. You can say, does my FOIL make that? Okay, that's a check. Quick check. 6x squared. Negative 8x, negative 9x. Check. Does your last times your last make 12? Okay, these are going to be fraction answers. Do you remember how to make those? Opposite, divide. Okay? It's just algebra. So how do you isolate the x there? You'd have to move the 3 and divide the 2, right? Move, divide. That's just your algebra. So opposite, divide. Okay, number 9, 2 variables equals 0. That's all there. So now factoring, look it over. Which style? GCF is the pick. So what can you take out of those 2 items? What's the most you can take out? 3x. Okay, I always go for the most that you can take out, right? That's what you're looking for. So 3x times x and 3x times negative 6. Again, you can kind of like distribute that to make sure you factored right. This times, yep, does this times to that. Okay, there's 2 answers here. So x equals 6 on the bracket there. And then this one sometimes tricks people. 3 times what? 3 times 0. Okay? I get people who sometimes write negative 3 there, but 3 times negative 3 makes negative 9, not 0. Okay, it's not adding, it's timesing there. This is adding stuff, subtracting stuff, but this is timesing. Okay, number 10. What's going on there? I think I only see one variable this time, right? There's just a b squared, it's the only thing. So what can you do if there's one variable? Isolate. Move, divide, that kind of idea. So minus 20, I'm going to divide and then I'd have to square root to get rid of the square. And what should we write here? Maybe I'm trying to trick you a little bit on this question. What do you think? Not solvable. There's no solution. You cannot ever square something to be negative. Because if you're squaring, your options are positive times positive, which is positive. The other squaring would be negative times negative, which is positive. So it can't work. Okay, number 11. There's only one variable here. X squared is the only thing I see. So that's a one variable. So what does that mean? isolation math. Okay, algebra, group stuff together. So my first step is usually going to the variables together. I like to get rid of the smaller variable. That's my kind of approach to things. I mean, you can do things different ways, but so 3x squared okay, then I'm going to move the number divide okay, the last one. So this is very similar to example 3. So I would say there's 2 solution methods. Because this is only one variable, you could pick isolation. Or actually you could pick a difference of squares. Okay? I'm going to do it in both ways. So you can start working and pick. Okay, so this is what I'm at. So if I did the isolation, I moved. And if I did the difference of squares, I look like this. Okay, continuing on, how do you undo something that's the fourth? You would have to fourth root something. Do we know how to do that on a calculator? Do you know how to do that? So I have this button right here. X root. This is the X root. I could push 4 and then that button. So I had to push 4 X root. So that's that button. You have to push the 4 first. Okay. So then I get a 5. But I can't forget that there would actually be a plus or a minus option because I could go 5 repeated 4 times to get there. But -5 would also work out for me. Okay. Also, if you want, what could you do? You could square root and square root again, because square rooting makes a y squared, and square rooting again makes a y, right? And on this one, you should recognize that this one creates a difference of squares. But what do we remember about this one? You can't factor this one. So you can't go any further with that one. It's not factorable. Okay, that one's not factorable. Okay, and if you think about this bracket here, this y squared would have to be -25, and it's not allowed to be negative. You can't square to be negative. Okay, number 13. Two variables. Okay, 0, check. Can I take anything out? Divide by 2, nope. Divide by 4, nope. I don't think so. Complex. This is going to be big, isn't it? What's 4 times 49? 196. Now we have to find a multiple of that. Yikes. Okay. 1 times 196 is not going to work. 2 times 98. Not going to work. 4 times 49 will not get me to that. 7 times 28. Nope. Fourteen times 14, would that get me to 28? Okay, what do I know about the signs on this? Let's think. We have to multiply to positive, but then we need to add to negative 28. So we're going to say negative, negative. Okay, so here's my F options. I'm going to list them. I could do a 1x times 4x, 2x times 2x. That's the option list. The 49 could be 149 or 7. Do you see how your multiplication table, you got to have that nice and memorized to do this quickly? Okay, so what am I doing to make a 14 and a 14? Looks like we're going to have the same sets, right? Okay, so FOIL, first times first. I'm picking 2x times 2x. FOIL outside. FOIL inside. And then we picked minus, minus. Okay, on this example, both brackets are the exact same. So how many answers are there going to be? There's just going to be one answer. That's it. One answer. You don't have to write it twice, okay? Because it's the same value in both brackets. So that means what kind of parabola is happening? Remember that? That's possible, right? That's all it's doing. Touching once. Okay, number 14. I feel like a little bit of a challenge question. I think we're ready for it though. Okay, let's work on some isolation here. So I'm going to minus 2. I'm going to times by 4. Okay, I am going to square root. What do I get over here? Does this look familiar? What am I going to write here? Plus or minus. Okay, and then I would have to add 4 in the last step. So you're going to have 2 answers, so you have to do this 2 different ways. So positive 6 plus 4. Positive 6 plus 4. Okay, what's the other time you're going to do it? Negative 6 plus 4. So that one is going to be a negative 2. Okay, do you see how important this plus or minus thing is? Okay, and 15, our last factoring one. I don't like this question. What's the thing I probably don't like? I don't like the fraction. It's throwing me off. So what kind of strategy could I do to help myself out? I could times by the bottom fraction part, the denominator, and get rid of that. So candy to children, you have to give everybody that. So 2x squared. So what happens here? This 7 over 2 times 2. Can you see what's going to happen? The divide 2 and the times 2 are just going to disappear, right? Cancel from each other. Okay, so now I've actually turned this into a complex. Okay, so my flow number now is negative 8. I have to produce a positive 7. I have to produce a positive 7. So there's my OI. Okay, FOIL, the OI part of FOIL. So I'm going to look for a 1x partnership and an 8x partnership. Okay, again, check your FOIL. Does it FOIL to your original? Okay, your solutions. Well, this one is just a single. But this one, because it starts complex, like it has a something value in front of the x, it's going to be a fraction. Okay, so hopefully you've mastered that recognition of factoring. You always have to say, okay, yeah, I know this style, now I know what to do. Okay, I've also had people on the test solve something like this with the quadratic formula. You can do that always, right? Okay, multiple ways to do that. And again, on a test, you can go back, you can plug a half in with your calculator, run it through. Okay, should work out. Okay, number 16 says, can you solve with the quadratic formula? So you guys all know that I will give you this. Do not memorize it. Okay, I will give you that on the formula sheet, okay? So you're going to get that from me. Okay, there's a problem. You can't start this. Why can't you start right away? Equals 0. That's the thing that's missing, right? Two variables equals 0, no matter what. Also, what's another thing I could do to trick you? I might write them out of order, right? You got to pay attention to the order. I might not necessarily write the x squared first. So you got to find that. Okay, this is an order now. There's an A, that's the B, that's the C. Okay, not always do I write it like that, so be careful. Wink, wink. Okay, so here I go. Opposite B is -3. Plus minus the square root of the B value squared is going to be a 9. Okay, always put something positive there. Okay, whenever you square something, doesn't matter. That's going to be a positive value. Minus 4 times 2 times -7. All over 2 times a 2. Okay, so -3 plus minus the root of something over 4. Okay, now I want you to go into your calculator and I want you to type what I call just the discriminant stuff. Which is 65. This would not have ever factored because this isn't a nice root. That's why it's not a factoring one. Okay, so you don't have to write this, but I'll just show you what I'm typing into my calculator. Okay, you don't have to write that down for me, but this is me showing you my calculator screen. 2 separate times. On your test, I'm going to ask you to make sure you're going to 2 decimal places. So if you round, make sure you're rounding properly. Okay, I asked you to do a sketch for me, so somewhere on the test you will be doing a sketch. So what does this mean? On a sketch, what are these numbers going to represent? X-intercepts. Okay, so here's my positive 1.27. Here's my negative 2.77, and I understand what the shape is. Does this open up or does it open down? Okay, I don't want much details. I just want you to understand, well, what's this mean and what's the shape, up or down? Okay, 17, this will be a quick question here. How many solutions are there? So what do I worry about? I'm only worried about this square root part, which is called the discriminant, okay, because I have some rules about that. So I'm only worried about b squared minus 4ac. That's all I want. Okay, so here we go. B squared. What happens if I square negative 3? Positive 9. Minus 4 times 5 times 1. Negative 11. So what do I know? What happens if I go to square root negative 11? Can't square root, so there will be no answers to this. B squared, so 9 squared gives me 81. Minus 4 times 2 times negative 5. Make sure you're careful with your negatives. So I get 121. Obviously that's positive value. So if I square root something positive, I could go plus that or minus that and make 2 answers. And the last one, b squared, so negative 6 times negative 6 makes positive, always positive, minus 4 times negative 3 times negative 3. And that calculates to be 0. So what happens in that formula if you add the square root of 0 or subtract the square root of 0? You're not getting 2 different things. You're only going to get 1. Okay, so that's the rules. Negative, nothing. Positive, 2. If you get a 0, there's just going to be 1 answer. Okay, and we're almost done. The last one. So completing the square, you will use this one spot on your test when you have to. Otherwise, don't pick it. It's not the best method. Okay, so my start for isolation is I'm actually going to divide everything by 3. Okay, on your test, I have instructions for you to leave as a fraction. So practice this. Okay, next, I'm going to move this away so that I can leave room for myself. Okay, so I moved that out. And then what do you want to put here? You want to create your own thing there. So half squared is 1. Balance it out. So I have to add 1. This is now a perfect square. So I have to multiply to 1 and add to 2. Here, I'm going to add fractions. So I'm going to change 1 to be a 3 over 3. Does that make sense why I'm doing that? Because this had a bottom of 3, so I'd like to also have a bottom of 3. Okay, now I'm going to square root both sides. This is nice. The square root and square are just disappearing. So x plus 1. What are we not going to forget? Plus minus. And then did you notice how my whole fraction is inside that house? My whole fraction is in there. Okay, I want you to leave your answer like that, but I have an extension question on your test where I say, can you try to make this a decimal answer now as well? Can you give me your 2 answers as a decimal and then we're done? Okay, so your calculator should look like this for one of them. And then your calculator should look like that. So once where it's plus and once where it's minus. Can you give me 2 decimals? Please practice typing. I for sure have this question on a test where I would like you to make it into a decimal when you're done.